Folks, it turns out guy cheerleaders, or rather gay cheerleaders, are now entering the NFL games. In total, 12 teams have male cheerleaders as of 2025, up from 7 teams last year. That includes the Minnesota Vikings, and the trend is upsetting a lot of people. Actor Kevin Sorbo had some tough remarks, apparently backing away from supporting the Minnesota Vikings now. The Rams were the first team to introduce male cheerleaders back in 2018. They were featured at the Super Bowl in 2022 when the Rams topped the Bengals. And here's the full list of teams now with male cheerleaders as of 2025. Minnesota Vikings, Baltimore Ravens, Los Angeles Rams, New Orleans Saints, Philadelphia Eagles, San Francisco 49ers, New England Patriots, Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts, Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders are not planning to feature any male members, of course. Then, by the year 2023, it turned out that 2 homosexuals actually function as captains of the NFL cheerleading teams, and some 16 are known homosexuals. So, what to say about the sexualization and the homosexualization of the NFL? Couple of points. Number one, these sorts of things distance Christians increasingly from pop culture. Well, the NFL played their games on Sundays, while Christians are not forsaking the assembling of themselves together on the first day of the week when Christ rose from the dead. There's nothing wrong with bodily exercise, but Christians are constantly considering how the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life might show up here and there in big sports or entertainment events. Also, certainly we don't want to subject ourselves to temptations to lust or to some form of sexual attraction to a person who may be dressed a certain way. But also the Bible abominates gender confusion in dress, which implies any kind of gender confusion in antics, movements, dancing, pretending a woman's voice, and so on. Deuteronomy 22:5 says, "A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God." Now, even Reformed churches have brought men into the services to dance their ballet moves in what appears to be an example malakoi, as referenced in 1 Corinthians 6. We've also seen within the churches a softening towards, transgenderism, homosexuality, effeminacy, a gender-neutral kind of dress. Men increasingly want to wear their hair like women today. I don't know if you've noticed this, but only 25% of men would spend money on hairstyling in 1990. Today, it's 82% of men using these products. Men spending on personal care in the 1980s, typically 1/5 to 1/6 that of women, but by the time you hit the 2020s, the gap has narrowed dramatically, with younger men sometimes outspending women in beauty categories. 20% of U.S. men now will shave, wax, or trim their body hair. That number rises to 30% among younger men ages 24 to 34. In Germany, it's even higher, 50% across ages 15 to 24, and 40% among 20 to 34-year-olds. According to a Barclays study, 23% of men ages 18 to 34 have undergone cosmetic procedures like Botox, fillers, or veneers, as opposed to 21% of women in the same age category. So more men than women are doing the Botox thing. Since 2020, men's spending in the health and beauty sector has grown by 58%, outpacing women's growth at 45%. Now, here's the principle. Here's the scriptural principle. The longer the hair, the more care one needs to take care of it. 1 Corinthians 11 brings this out. It says, "Judge among yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her hair uncovered? Does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? But if a woman has long hair, it's a glory to her, for her hair is given to her for a covering." Now, the Greek word for long hair is koma, which is a female hairstyle requiring some form of styling. It's a long hair requiring styling, pampering, a high degree care, as women are like to do to their hair. Men, however, have been very much emasculated. I don't particularly like the word feminized. Can we just use the word emasculated? The Bible actually uses another word, it's malakoi. Men have become soft and weak. So this is really the fundamental problem for men today. We've never lived in such a soft age. The masses are soft. We call them snowflakes today. We've never faced, as I see it, such a potential for devastation, the slaughter of 4 to 8 billion children in the last 50 years by the threats of weapons of mass destruction, a worldwide economic cataclysm unlike anything the world has ever seen. And yet we have this incredible softness and weakness in the face of such intimidating and challenging issues before us. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this. A softer age, and yet an age that is facing the most tremendous, horrific future that we could imagine. There is a weakness today today, an unwillingness to face heavy-duty spiritual realities, a weakness that gives way easily to addictions, a weakness that turns leadership over to women, family, church, and state. We just did a program on that in which we found there were much more women applying for military service in this country than in previous years. There's also a weakness that fears conspiracies, fears the future. There's a weakness of fragility in human relationships. There's an incredible weakness in doctrine and worldview foundations, a weak gospel, a weak grace, a weak faith, weak men, weak churches, weak leaders, a weak Jesus, a weak pretty much everything. That's why I wrote the book Strong, because I believe strong is what we need. More than anything else today, we need to act like men and be strong. Be strong in faith. And friends, we need this strength more than any other time before. How quickly people break down emotionally, how quickly they're deceived by the world, how quickly scandals develop, how quickly people are discouraged, disheartened, disengaged, how quickly people turn to fear, how quickly they give in to the temptation of the devil, the effeminacy, the weakness, the walking away from the battle. Here's the problem. It's destructive. It destroys families. It destroys marriage. It destroys churches, society. What we need is strength. We need to be strong. And that's why we want to be sure that that men are stronger than ever, that men catch the vision. That's why our Act Like Men conference scheduled for October 29th. Men, our families need this more than anything else. Our wives need it. Our churches need men who are strong in faith. So act like men, be strong. That's the theme for our conference coming up October 29th. So be equipped, bring your sons. By the way, meals provided, 4 days of teaching, 7 speakers, fellowship, prayer, psalm singing. October 29th out here on the Eastern Plains of Colorado. Sign up at generations.org/shepherds. Well, more on the NFL in just a moment with Bill Jack from Worldview Academy. Stay with us, friends. And we are back on Generations. Kevin Swanson with you. Bill, I went after effeminacy among men, which I don't really like the word effeminate, because I don't think it's just men looking like women. Well, that's somewhat the case, but they're not being masculine. Well, they're not being biblical. They're not doing the sorts of things that men are doing. Culture. Well, the feminization of our culture simply means that women are stepping up and doing what men ought to be doing.
And men are stepping back.
So that's a problem.
So this whole thing about hairstyle and hair and length of hair, it's always been a tension, and it's a cultural thing in many ways. For example, before World War I, men typically had longer hair and they had longer beards. But with World War I, what happened is, because of the infestation of lice and other things, they would just shave guys' heads when they sent them off to war. And then when they came back, that was the style that was adopted, was the buzz cut. And we saw that with World War II. In the 50s, everybody had flat tops, and then styles changed again. So the question would be, is it the length of hair? Is there a standard for that? I'm thinking of Samson. Samson did not let a razor touch his head. And then when he was deceived by Delilah, God's blessing left him.
That's why I would take 1 Corinthians 11 by the Greek word, which is koma. The word koma does not necessarily mean long hair. It means a woman's approach to hair.
Okay.
And so, the length of hair isn't specified in Scripture, but one thing is specified, and that is that men not be pampering their hair like women do, or that men turn their hair into their glory. So for men, their hair is not their gloriousness. For women, it is. That's why women put as much work into their hair as they do, and that's appropriate. Turns out the Bible is even concerned about not putting too much gold into the hair, et cetera, et cetera. Some limits placed on that as well in 1 Timothy chapter 2, I believe it is.
Right.
But when it comes to men, we have to be very, very cautious we don't give way to this coma. And what is the coma? Not just long hair. Now, granted, 1 Corinthians 11 translates it as long hair. And I think most translations refer to it as long hair. But it would be better to say long hair as a woman has long hair. So the other thing is, it's not right for men to appear like women or to attempt to look like women. or to act like them or talk like them. So, you see that with homosexuality. You see that with the effeminate homosexual approach.
It's exaggerated.
These are the sorts of things.
It's so exaggerated.
Typically exaggerated, yeah.
That they try to be more feminine than women are.
Yeah.
In fact, it is a turnoff to many women to see a guy to pretend to be more feminine, and it's almost a mockery. It is a mockery of God's order. It is a mockery of the glory and the beauty of women, and it degrades God's creation by doing that. So the question again would be, I mean, there are denominations that hold to strict rules about length of hair, and that becomes legalism. So it's not the length of the hair. We look at Samson. It is the assumption of the assuming of a feminine style or a feminine demeanor among men.
Well, it's an attempt to make hair glorious as a woman's hair is glorious. And I think we can tell the distinction. I think the average person can tell when you've got a young man that is increasingly effeminate in his hairstyle, his hairstyling, painting his nails, his toenails, his mannerisms, etc. That kind of thing is increasingly common in our day. In fact, I just gave the stats.
Yep.
There are in some cases, for some age groups, men are spending more time on their cosmetics than women are in our present day.
So let's flip the other side of the coin. What about women who have shorter haircuts? Is that a problem?
Well, there may come a point at which they no longer express themselves in their glory as the scriptures allow for it. Now, it's interesting also, the Bible requires some sort of covering at points for women, and there's some tension and some controversy on that among Christian churches.
I mean, we're treading in areas that make denominations unique.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
you have to keep coming back to the principle, which is what? Which is that women are the glory of the man, the hair is the glory of the woman, etc. Those are the principles.
What you're coming back to is men should be men and women should be women.
Well, those are the principles, yeah. And the abomination occurs when men increasingly look like women and women increasingly look like men, and that's a problem. To come out and say, well, therefore women should never wear these clothes or men should never wear these clothes is perhaps, edging into legalism. But there is a point at which societies, you take Japanese society, in which they were all wearing kimonos. There was a very, very distinctive difference between the kimonos that men would wear and the kimonos that women would wear.
Yeah. I was thinking of places like in India and Pakistan, where the attire for men there would not be acceptable here.
Right. Well,
would not be acceptable as a style here.
The kimono itself looks a little bit like a dress.
Right.
Or you take the kilt for the Scottish.
Right.
Same issue.
It is. It's a skirt.
But within that particular culture, it's pretty distinct. I mean, that culture knows. Like if you were to ask, 100 people in that culture, can you distinguish between a man's dress and a woman's dress in that culture?
Right.
They would all say, oh yeah, of course, the difference looks like this. But if you attempt that in gender blender cultures like ours, where the whole intent is to utterly abolish the differences between what women look like, what men look like, in terms of hairstyle, in terms of dress, et cetera, you just have to go to the heart of this and saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Are you intentionally attempting to erase the distinction between man and woman here? Are you working your way into transgenderism in the way in which you're presenting yourself, whether that be a young lady in a church or whether that be a young man who's attending your program down in Canyon City? I think it's appropriate for us to just walk up to the young men or young women and say, why are you doing this? And are you intentionally trying to look more like the other gender?
Right.
And I just think the question should be honestly placed in any given context, in any given culture. If indeed they're trying to blend the genders and to look like the opposite gender, then you're violating the Deuteronomy 22:5 principle.
And I think my point is we have to be careful that we're not overlaying our culture onto a biblical passage. It's
Right.
not a cultural.
You have to be careful.
We have to be very careful. I'm thinking when I got married, I had pretty long hair. I had longer hair. I had hair. Okay. Oh, for those
That's
days.
a difference.
Yeah, there is a difference. So, and it was not considered to be the attempt to appear feminine when guys had longer hair back in the 70s. It was a cultural style, as it was prior to World War I. So I think that you're very clear in pointing out that the principle is the man trying to appear to be a woman? Is the woman trying to appear to be a man? Are they going against the cultural standards that are set for appropriate dress for men and women? And how then do we react and respond in those situations? Because every culture has a form of modesty, for example. Some fewer than others, but every culture understands this is modest, this is immodest. And again, it varies culture to culture, but we set standards for what is appropriate and inappropriate in every culture. And so when it comes to this particular issue, I think we have to be cautious that we're not trying to overlay our cultural understanding onto the passage. And it comes down to men should be men and women should be women.
When you hear these statistics that there are more men pampering their bodies using cosmetic procedures like Botox, fillers, and veneers than women, what are you thinking? What are you thinking about this culture?
I'm thinking that it's become very self-centered and narcissistic. That's it's the Greek myth about Narcissus and how he was so enamored with himself that he stared into the pool, and finally the gods turned him into the flower.
Do you think that?
I think that's what's happening. And so we become, as you pointed out, soft, self-centered. We're not willing to sacrifice for our families, for our mate, and thus culture disintegrates and families disintegrate.
Do you think that this issue needs to be addressed?
Yes. Yes.
And do you think that it's affected the churches?
Absolutely. It has. And I see it working with youth. There is confusion. That's one of the marks that I've seen, even with the students with whom I work. And we're talking at Worldview Academy. We're dealing with the cream of the crop. These are students who come to camp for the most part with a desire. They've already trusted Christ.
They're serious.
They're serious about their faith. They want to make a difference. And yet I'm seeing an increase in confusion.
And that's probably due to the popular culture that's gone in this direction.
Even though many of our students are homeschooled, and you'd think they have been pulled out of culture. No.
It's amazing. It passes around like the measles.
Yeah, it affects you. Penetrates. It's like the finest penetrating oil. Billboards.
Incredible.
Your social media. So
the youth group.
Yes. Right. So there's biblical illiteracy as well, an increase in that, which then encourages confusion because they have nowhere to turn for their authority. So biblical authority is lacking, illiteracy biblically. It leads to confusion and a false pietism, as I've mentioned earlier. It's this idea, I know that's what the Bible says, but I think differently.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that generally in the culture.
So what's the solution here, Bill? I mean, I've brought out the solution that men need to be stronger and men need to be like men, and we have a conference coming up, Act Like Men.
Right.
But what would you tell the average pastor? How does he counsel young people in his church?
Right. And that would be my question. What does it mean to act like men? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman?
Yeah.
We're not talking biology here. We're talking about what are the characteristics that make one an attractive man in our culture. And I'm not talking about attractive to women. I'm just talking about someone that we admire.
Somebody who's manly.
Yes. What are the characteristics that make a man manly and a woman womanly?
And how does a pastor exemplify that and teach that to the young men in his church? What do you think?
First of all, that they need to that everybody, men and women, need to fall in love with Jesus. Okay, and when they fall in love with Jesus, then they get over themselves. We're called to die to ourselves.
Jesus being the ultimate exemplification of what it is to be a man.
Right. Yeah. He embodies every quality, every characteristic of what I would call the hero. Courageous, fearless, self-sacrificing,
compassionate,
merciful. And
we've talked about this before, but when you get that out of balance, when you get Jesus out of balance,
then
you've created your own little conception of Jesus, who can be that effeminate, soft, milk-toasty little thing, you've got it out of balance. You've got to get the right Jesus. The point is you've got to present the right Jesus.
And then you begin to see yourself in light of those things. Right. And you become skewed in what you consider to be manly. But every hero that we admire in literature and in movies and in fiction or nonfiction, they possess certain qualities that make them attractive to us,
and and they become role models, and we want to model them.
Yes, and that's why Jesus is the ultimate role model, ultimate hero, because he embodies all of those qualities, all of those characteristics. But I am concerned that in our culture today, we have feminized the Jesus. We've made him, gentle Jesus, weak and mild. When the word meek does not mean weak. Okay, it's Jesus is meek and mild. Yes, meek is the quality of strength under control. It's the picture you can paint of a 12-year-old girl riding on a stallion and having the reins of that stallion. He could do anything he wants to. He could throw her off. He could take her wherever he wants to, but he submits to the reins held by that little girl. That's meekness. It's strength under control. Jesus was not weak in any way. He was meek. He had strength under control. He was deliberate in everything he did. He was contemplative, but he wasn't ashamed to confront with truth. And it was truth and grace. Those two things, truth and grace, mark the ministry of Jesus and every word that he said. I don't get the warm fuzzies when I read his words. I get the cold pricklies. Okay.
Now, one of the things I was thinking was the Jesus weak and wild.
Yes.
Not just meek and mild, but the weak and wild.
Yeah.
Because you remember the wild at heart conception of manliness that came out 20 years ago.
John Eldredge,
that was the author. Humanistic, man-centered, man is sovereign, God is weak, man is sovereign, man is wild at heart, man submits to his own heart, man is seeking his own heart and the directions that are set by his own heart. It was the adventuresome man, the self-reliant man, the self-sufficient man, sometimes the macho man, the cool man, the stoical man, but not necessarily the man who feared God, not necessarily the covenantal man, not exactly the responsible man, fulfilling the responsibilities that God has laid out for manhood, but definitely the wild at heart man. And so the weak and wild man wasn't exactly the man that God wants us to be.
Right.
And so what we want to do with this conference coming up is to really get to the core of what it is to be a Jesus man.
Right.
Not the weak and wild man, and not just the meek and mild man, but whatever Jesus is. And as you said, it's that mix of all of those things. He is the covenantal man. He's the federal head. He's the one who sets his face like a flint and follows through on his Father's will to be the head of the church, to sacrifice, to give up his life. He's compassionate. He's sacrificial. He's courageous. He's a covenant-keeping federal head for his people. We want to pull this thing apart, really understand it, because Bill, I think this is one of the most important subjects of the day. Do you agree?
I agree. And I think the word that is a good word to use is that men need to understand their agency, their position, and what they are called to do. And it is not defined. I mean, men want challenges. They want to succeed. They want to accomplish. They want to conquer. Okay, and women want security generally. They want a place of security for their family, for their children, and so these seem to be in conflict, but they're not really, because a man, when he's focused on Christ, understands that he lays his life down for his family, that he provides for his family, that he succeeds, that he exercises his agency in protection and provision for those whom God has given him.
And that's what makes him the man of God,
makes him the man
that God wants him to be. That's the message, my friends, for this Act Like Men conference, October 29th out here in Elizabeth, Colorado. Teaching for 4 days. Registration includes meals, book resources, as well as times of fellowship, prayer times together, small groups, lodging. You can select certain options on the registration. We have some options here, and you might want to do a hotel as well, but all available here at our website, generations.org/shepherds.
And if you want to be really manly, you can just sleep outside.
Well, yeah, you can sleep out in the back of the facility. Sure. Speakers are Scott Brown, Kevin Swanson, yours truly, Alex Strauch, Todd Adams, Steve Walker, Josh Ishwiso, Todd Strasser, and wow, we're going to have a great time. So come on down. Hopefully you can come as well, Bill. At least drop in, say hi. So Act Like Men Conference, October 29th to November 1st. Check it out at generations.org/shepherds. This is Kevin Swanson and Bill Jack inviting you back again next time as we continue to lay down a vision for the next generation. This has been a production of the Generations Media Network. For more information, go to generations.org/media.